CEO's heartfelt revelation. Son surprises everyone by choosing Maid over 10 glamorous socialites. Mark Prescott stood at the grand entryway of the sprawling mansion, mulling over the impending gala with a sense of dread tinged with excitement. The prominent social elite were as much a part of his empire as his ventures, reputations hinged on the whispers that would circulate through their exclusive circles. He longed for his son, Ethan, to step up to present the perfect image, to grace the event with the desired elegance. In a world driven by spectacle, it was crucial for Ethan to cast aside the shadows of doubt. Yet, beneath all that ambition lay an undercurrent of fear. Could he mold Ethan into the leader the community expected, or was he simply imposing his ideals on a son who harbored dreams Mark had yet to comprehend? As he scrolled through the guest list, the importance of the moment weighed heavily on him. At the forefront was Megan, the dazzling socialite whose every smile was polished to perfection. She epitomized the life Mark envisioned for Ethan, the ideal match for a future intertwined with prestige. But there was more than a mere invitation on this agenda. Hidden within Mark's ambitions was a nagging fear that if he failed to sculpt Ethan's choices, he might break his own carefully crafted legacy. Would his son end up resenting him, and by extension, the empire built on ceaseless ambition? As he orchestrated every detail of the night, Mark's mind drifted to Ethan's uncompromising connection with Mia, the family maid. Mark had always assigned Mia a cursory role in their lives, yet she had become a quiet fixture in their home. He dismissed her as someone beneath their circle, her dreams and aspirations dismissed in the swirl of silk and cashmere. But lately, he had noticed their interactions growing, Ethan leaning toward intellect and raw authenticity, unsure how it clashed with his father's expectations. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Ethan's choice gnawed at him as the gala approached. He knew he had to present Mia as mere background noise, a fleeting moment in the glamour of their lives. But he couldn't shake the sinking feeling that Ethan considered her something more. It boiled with complexity, threatening to erupt when he least expected it. As the evening unfolded, Mark caught sight of Ethan and Mia entering together, hand in hand, radiating warmth against the backdrop of polished marble and glimmering chandeliers. Gasps resonated in the room, piercing through the excited chatter as the realization settled like a lead weight in Mark's stomach. The weight of Ethan's defiance hung heavily in the air, illuminating a division as wide as the room itself. Mark's heart raced as he registered the murmurs, the judgment in the eyes of his peers. The facade he flourished so delicately felt suddenly fragile. As Ethan locked eyes with him, a powerful realization crashed over Mark. This moment could either forge a fracture in their relationship or inspire an awakening. He stood at the threshold of losing his son to a world he couldn't begin to understand, while clinging to his vision of legacy. An unexpected guest emerged from the shadows, someone who carried secrets from Mia's past that could unravel everything. As tension mounted, Mark faced the agonizing truth. Could he place value on a son choosing love over notoriety? The night shimmered with possibility, an emotional storm on the horizon, as the question loomed, would he embrace a future forged in real connection or remain shackled to the chains of legacy? Mark's gaze remained locked on Ethan as disbelief coursed through him like wildfire. A silence settled over the room, collective breaths suspended in time, and it forced him to confront the frayed edges of his carefully woven life. He could sense the invasive whispers not of curiosity but of judgment ricocheting off the marble, mocking him. It was a call-out, a direct confrontation with the very foundation of his meticulously curated social empire. Determined not to show any cracks, Mark smoothed his jaw, adopting a demeanor of indifference. Amidst the turbulence of his emotions, he noted Ethan's resolute expression. It revealed a new dimension of courage that had been absent in their past interactions. This wasn't merely an act of rebellion, it was Ethan's declaration of agency. Subconsciously, Mark began to question his own moral compass. Was he truly standing for Ethan's best interests, or was he defending his pride? As the minutes crawled on, Mark felt the escalating weight of the present pressing against his rigid shoulders. Each intentional step Ethan took toward Mia was laden with defiance and an unbreakable bond that threatened to topple everything Mark believed to be paramount. A flicker of anger ignited within him, carrying sharp edges of frustration and confusion. How could Ethan truly see value in a world so distant from their social standing, yet beneath his tempest of thoughts lay an unexpected spark of admiration. Ethan had chosen authenticity over superficiality, and he felt a wavering pride for the first time, a longing, however faint, for the boldness Ethan displayed. It caused him to reflect on his own trajectory, the qualities he honed through relentless ambition and calculated decisions. Had he become too absorbed in appearances to recognize the worth in raw authenticity? The realization struck like ice water. As the last of the guests commenced hushed conversations around them, a sudden movement caught Mark's attention. Megan, ever the poised socialite, approached Ethan and Mia. Her expression was inscrutable, but ultimately betraying a sense of pity, a miscalculation, perhaps, of not understanding the strength of their connection. Mark inhaled sharply, prepared to intervene when, surprisingly, Ethan met her gaze without faltering. It embodied a profound shift within him, a stance not taken lightly, but with conviction. "What do you think you're doing, Ethan?" Megan finally compelled, a mix of confusion and confrontation threading through her voice. The room churned with anticipation, eyes slicing back and forth between the trio. Mark felt his heart pound in his chest, trapped between loyalty to his son and the fear of public perception. Deep down, the possible fallout loomed ominous, an erosion of the empire that had taken decades to construct. Ethan straightened, his voice steady as he replied, "I'm being true to myself, Megan. And I want to apologize for that." As the words echoed throughout the lavish room, Mark felt his resolve shifting, inching toward acceptance. This moment bore the weight of redefining not just their influence but the very essence of legacy itself. Yet, as the tension peaked, a flicker of movement caught his eye from the corner of the room. The unexpected guest, the one with the knowledge from Mia's past, was watching closely, their air thick with secrets ready to unspool. The stage had been set not just for Ethan's declaration but for the unraveling of Mark's constructs, challenging not only his legacy but the very core of his identity. Could he let go of his preconceived notions and embrace this shift, or would he cling to past paradigms, risking a fracturing relationship? Mark's pulse quickened, a storm rapidly approaching his reason, as the foundations of his world quaked beneath the surface. The moment hung precariously on the edge of revelation, pushing him toward an inevitable confrontation, scripting not just Ethan's journey, but his own. Mark's mind raced as Ethan's proclamation hung in the air like a thunderclap, startling him from the cocoon of his practiced poise. He felt every gaze in the room pierce through him, testing the boundaries of his carefully built reputation. The whispers, the expectations and the insecurities they stirred sat uncomfortably within him. He had spent a lifetime cultivating a perception of strength, authority, and success, but now that armor felt cracked and vulnerable, each heartbeat echoed his growing internal conflict. The recognition that Ethan's boldness might be a beacon rather than a challenge stirred a whirlpool of questions. In the relentless pursuit of success, had he overlooked the value of authenticity? What lessons had he willingly dismissed in favor of the socially acceptable? As he stood rooted to the spot, grappling with the surge of emotions, a sharp realization pricked at his thoughts. Ethan was blazing a path that Mark himself once walked before losing his way. Ethan's back remained straight, his gaze unwavering on Megan, who seemed increasingly bemused, her aristocratic brow knitting tighter with each lingering second. Mark could feel the weight of her judgment, but he realized with increasing clarity that the judgment that truly mattered was his own. The crowd's reaction began to ripple like a wave, some eyes sliding toward Mark with a mix of concern and surprise. He could sense their unspoken questions. How would he respond to his son's bold declaration? Would he support this venture into unfamiliar territory, or would he attempt to corral Ethan back to the expected path? This was not merely about Ethan, it was about who Mark had become, or, perhaps more accurately, who he had allowed himself to be. His life's ambition had revolved around a meticulously constructed image, but at what cost? The thought of legacy, of what he would leave behind, now filled him with dread instead of pride. Did he want to leave a world built on appearances, or did he yearn to accept that true value might lie beneath the surface? As the tension in the room escalated, Mark envisioned a new way forward, a landscape of possibilities reshaped by honesty and vulnerability. He felt the contours of resilience stirring within him, coaxing him forward, imploring him to engage authentically rather than defensively. The whispers around them morphed into a soundscape urging him on, nudging him toward a response that could redefine their roles. With newfound clarity and a deep inhale, Mark took a step into the fray, his whispered determination battling against years of protective instincts. "Ethan," he said, raising his voice above the whispers, steadying it with conviction, "I might not fully understand your choices, but I commend you for being true to yourself." Gasps broke through the crowd, surprise mingling with unmet expectations. He glanced at Ethan, whose expression softened, acknowledging the complexity of the moment. Together, they were redefining not just their relationship, but also the foundation upon which Mark had built his life. Yet even as the words traveled from his mouth, Mark's gaze shifted instinctively to the figure watching from the side, a silent observer with insight into Mia's past, their presence now a looming shadow unraveling within the moment. What revelations lay hidden in that individual's knowledge? The tension was far from dissipating, it was merely shifting shapes, pulling Mark into an unpredictable narrative that tested the very essence of his identity. Was he ready to face the forthcoming revelations, both personal and familial, without retreating to the shadow of his past decisions? The unknown loomed before him, and with it, the thrilling possibility of genuine transformation. With each heartbeat, the acknowledgement sank deeper. This journey was far from over, and its next steps would demand more from him than he had ever anticipated. Mark felt as though the air had thickened, each breath heavy with the unspoken burden of expectations and fear. Eyes still glistened with curiosity, and the ambience around him vibrated with an energy Mark couldn't quite parse. He had stepped past the threshold, but the implications seemed limitless and unsettling. Returning his gaze to Ethan, he saw a young man wrestling with both hope and apprehension. This moment, despite its chaos, had sparked a glimmer in Ethan's eyes that reminded Mark of his own youthful daring. He could almost hear the fingers of his past reaching out, trying to reclaim lost dreams and ambitions, urging him to step fully into the light and let go of the shadows he had cast so meticulously over his life. Mark could feel the spark of resolve ignite. He wanted to learn from his son, not just lecture him. This was not just an opportunity for Ethan to honor himself, it was an opportunity for Mark to embrace a new way forward, a path inclusive of vulnerability and authenticity. Clear thoughts bloomed in his mind, but they needed to be articulated, not just for Ethan's sake, but for his own journey of rediscovery. "And you know what that means, right?" Mark asked, his voice now steady. "To truly pursue something unconventional means owning your choices against all odds, misunderstanding and doubting included." Each word hung deliberately in the air, as if piecing together their fractured relationship, one vulnerable touchstone at a time. Ethan nodded slowly, his expression resolute. The knowledge that his father was willing to connect on this level seemed to bolster him, unraveling the tension that had once loomed so dauntingly between them. Mark felt warmth pool in his chest as he continued, "We often miss the truth in pursuit of success. But sometimes, success is simply being yourself and allowing your heart to lead, no matter how unconventional the path may appear." Mark could feel the justifications that had previously shielded him start to erode like cliffs subject to relentless tides. As he spoke, the nervous energy in the room shifted beneath them, no longer a clamor of judgment, but instead a collective contemplation. His eyes flicked briefly to the figure still standing at the fringes of the crowd, the observer, whose gaze felt like a cacophony of cautious expectation, hinting at past ties, unresolved tension, and painful history. This individual could unravel secrets buried within their family dynamic. Questions bubbled up in Mark's mind. What did this person know of Mia? What implications could their presence carry? Would that history threaten the tentative truths he was now weaving? Adamant to remain grounded in his moment with Ethan, Mark pushed those nagging thoughts aside. Family legacy felt tangled within the uncertainties of the present, confronting it had never been his forte. Yet, new resolve was gradually taking root within him, emboldening his steps into uncharted territory. He was ready to break the cycle of silence surrounding their lives. "I want us to talk honestly about everything past, present, and future," Mark finally declared, inviting the onlookers to witness more than a mere exchange between a father and son. He envisioned his intentions carving space for future discussions that might lead to healing in their fractured narrative. Ethan smiled, a combination of relief and pride that illuminated his features. It was a bridge between them, one that had seemed so ephemeral now felt tangible. For that moment, everything else faded into the background, yet, the specter of that silent observer lingered, and Mark couldn't shake the feeling that a deeper conflict awaited, one that threatened to infiltrate not only their fragile connection but the very foundation of their shared history. Was he truly ready to confront the shadows of the past? Questions swirled in Mark's mind, compelling him to consider the gravity of the unexamined. As he took a step closer to his son, he recognized that his journey toward authenticity wouldn't be a linear path. It would require grappling with the echoes of old choices, and with that, the walls felt as if they were beginning to crumble around him, revealing a path that led somewhere neither of them had anticipated. Mark realized then that the time had come to face the reality of their entwined past, the consequences of silence, and the need for clarity and healing that would define their reconciliation. Would they be able to navigate this surge of emotion, or would the tumult of history pull them apart once more? Mark's breath quickened as he turned back to Ethan, the surge of emotion transforming into a palpable urgency. He was stepping into uncharted territory, and every instinct within him quailed at the thought of what lay ahead. They needed to delve into their unspoken truths, but the shadows of the past felt suffocating. Anticipating the silence, Mark decided to lead the way, his voice steady, but tinged with trembling vulnerability. There's a weight I've carried for too long. It's about your mother, about choices I made that led us here. He watched as Ethan's eyes widened, uncertainty flickering across his youthful face. Would the boy be ready to confront the ghosts that haunted them? I want you to know who I really am, Mark pressed, feeling every muscle in his body pulse with urgency. He moved closer to Ethan, creating a private enclave amidst the lively animations of the gathering. I made choices that not only impacted me but shattered the family I aimed to protect. It caused me to lose sight of what truly matters, and I need you to understand that. Ethan's brow knit with concentration, which ignited an unexpected flame of hope in Mark. Perhaps they could bridge the chasm created by silence and misunderstanding. The brief moment of hesitation, the flicker of vulnerability between them, felt like a cracking open of possibilities. Here, under the pressure of revelation, their relationship could evolve, yet, the observer lingered an undercurrent of tension that Mark couldn't ignore. Who were they really, and what secrets could they unravel? Attempting to shake off the disquieting feeling, he shot them a sidelong glance. The figure remained immobile, a distant echo of decisions made long before Ethan's dreams began. Mark knew this moment was also a bargaining of boundaries between old and new, a tug-of-war between silence and truth. Sometimes, we chase so hard after a version of success that we forget the people we leave behind, Mark shared, his voice absorbing the shadows of the past. I don't want to repeat those mistakes with you. I want to build something real. Let us put the past on the table, your dreams, our family's history. Only then can we work toward a future that honors both. Ethan held his gaze, his expression shifting between excited apprehension and profound introspection. Okay, Dad. I want that too. A profound connection sparked, momentarily overriding the lingering weight of their shared legacy. But as the words hung in the air like static, the observer took a step forward, breaking the fragile cocoon enveloping father and son. Mark's heart thudded, tension coiling tightly in his chest. We need to discuss something important, the stranger's voice echoed, crisp and laden with gravity. A familiar pang of fear gripped Mark, his initial resolve wavering. This was the confrontation of shadows he had dreaded. We need to talk about Mia, the figure continued, the words cutting through the moment of connection like glass. Mark felt the world tilt underneath him, his heart hammering as he considered the implications of the revelation. Would this thread of history lead to understanding, a chance to bridge their fractured narrative, or would it unravel the delicate fabric of what he had just begun to stitch? As uncertainty settled heavily within him, Mark readied himself for the inevitable, a confrontation with their deepest wounds, where myths and realities would clash violently. Would he be able to face the truth, to finally articulate the buried narratives of love and loss, or would they collapse under the tumult of painful revelations? With his resolve wavering, he gripped Ethan's shoulder, desperate for strength in both their futures but also fearful of shattering the fragile bond they had just begun to forge. Would they emerge whole, or would this pivot into the past tear them apart once more, leaving scars unhealed? Mark's eyes locked onto the stranger's face, a swirl of dread and uncertainty consuming him. The name Mia resonated like a thunderclap in his mind, conjuring a cascade of conflicting emotions. Who was this person to drag her into the heart of their burgeoning conversation? Mark felt the precariousness of their moment shift underfoot, and as he clung to that fragile connection with Ethan, anxiety churned in his stomach. Ethan, Mark started, but the words fell away, tangled in his throat. How much could he say before the tentative bond between them was severed, before the past clawed its way back and disrupted the fragile threads he was trying to weave towards a better future? The observer's gaze pierced through him, the undeniable weight of their presence heavy in the air. You don't even know the half of it, the figure continued, the accusatory tone drawing a line between silence and confrontation. Mia is more connected to this than you realize. Ethan glanced between them, confusion and alarm written all over his face. Who exactly is she? He asked, incredulity sharp in his voice. Gripping Ethan's shoulder, Mark felt the tension radiating through his son, a palpable mix of frustration and curiosity. It's complicated, Mark finally managed, his voice low, wrestling with the impulse to protect Ethan from a turbulent reignited past. But stifling the truth cranked up the inner pressure. The very integrity of their fragile resolve teetered at the brink of collapse. Could he afford to shield his son from the ghosts that had haunted his own existence? Seeing hesitation on Mark's face, the figure stepped closer, asserting a presence that made Mark recoil instinctively. You owe it to him. Your son deserves the truth. Just as Mia deserves recognition, not erasure. The words landed heavily, and every pulse in Mark's body screamed to counter. Recognition? It might expose the wounds too raw to confront, resurrecting truths he had buried deep in the recesses of his mind. Mark's thoughts raced. This wasn't just about an estranged connection, it was about legacy, about choices made long before Ethan was born which still reverberated through every decision he now battled. What had he taught his son about truth, if he shied away when every instinct demanded to confront it? Who was she to you? Ethan's demand brought Mark spiraling back. The question sparked a fresh wave of anger, mingled with remorse. He couldn't brush this off. The menacing specter of Mia forced his hand, sweeping his protective instincts into a reckoning. Your mother. Mark paused, choosing his words carefully, acutely aware of the weight they would carry. She once was the cornerstone of everything. But I let my ambitions cloud my judgment and forged a path that shattered our family. Ethan's face betrayed the onset of understanding, his jaw hardening as the implications unfolded. Was that why she left? The piercing question hung in the air, innocent yet suffused with an understanding that cut deeper than any barb. Mark hesitated, grappling with his son's gaze that had turned so earnest, so full of unuttered pain. Partly, he admitted, hearing the crack in his own voice. But it was my inability to face my own shortcomings that ultimately drove her away. I built walls instead of relationships. Ethan seemed to absorb this, the internal dialogue evident as he scraped through the delicate fabric of their past. Mark dared to hope, believing this might be a defining moment in shaping his son's worldview, a chance to educate Ethan on the reality of flaws and the power of redemption, but the observer remained, breathing life into the lingering question. Was it too late for Mark to find that redemption? Would diving into the depths of this revelation sow seeds of understanding or tear apart everything they had just begun to rebuild? Mark's pulse quickened, a bond forged anew at risk of disintegration. Could they face this dual legacy? The fragile grip on what lay ahead began to slip through his fingers as the clock ticked down to an inevitable truth that was less painful than the silence. The time had come to face a reckoning, but would they survive it, or drown in the revelations of a past he thought they could leave behind? With mounting urgency, Mark whispered, "Tell me everything." The silence stretched, heavy and electric, as Mark's heart thundered in his chest. He felt exposed, a raw nerve laid bare. Against the backdrop of his son's expectant gaze, he waged an internal battle, questioning whether he truly wanted to unearth the skeletons he had meticulously buried. The figure, who had so intrusively shaken their world, seemed to sense Mark's hesitation. You can't build a bridge to the future without addressing the wreckage of the past, the stranger urged, a note of fervor unfurling in their voice. The words were knotted with significance, echoing in Mark's mind long after they were spoken. Maybe it's time to start being real with each other, Ethan finally said, prompting a shudder in Mark as the vulnerability of that statement slashed at the protective layers he had built around his heart. Mark swallowed hard, trying to summon the courage. Mia was part of our lives, part of everything good and bad, he began, his voice shaking slightly. She was my partner before everything fell apart. Your mother was young, ambitious, and her dreams were everything to her. I got lost in mine. Ethan frowned, his brow furrowing as he processed this revelation. So, what happened? Why can't we find her? You didn't want to keep her in our lives? Guilt clawed at Mark, visceral and unrelenting. It was never about wanting or not wanting. I let work consume me. I thought that success would fill the void I created. When she tried to reach out, I was too far gone. I didn't just lose Mia, I lost who I could have been as a father, as a partner. There it was, a fissure in the facade Mark had carefully constructed to insulate himself from pain. He realized that each confession was a step toward breaking free from the stifling grip of fear that had kept him shackled. Ethan's eyes searched Mark's, desperately seeking clarity amidst uncertainty. Did she love us? The question struck a sensitive chord within Mark, triggering a memory of Mia's laughter mingled with the sound of Ethan's first steps, echoing in the corridors of his mind. Of course, Mark replied, his voice softer now, steeped in sorrow. Love is strong, Ethan. But I made it so hard for her to stay. I was drowning in my ambition, and it pushed her away. Mark could see Ethan wrestling with the emotional debris left in the wake of his father's mistakes. Mark had wanted to shield him from this, but now he was laying the bitter truth bare. I should have fought for our family, but instead, I watched it fall apart, he admitted, the gravity of his failures flooding his senses. What do you want from me? Ethan's voice trembled, caught between disbelief and a burgeoning sense of understanding. I want you to know that men can change, but it takes humility and the willingness to face the scars we've created, Mark said, determination threading through his tone. It's never too late if you want to break the cycle, you have to know where you came from. Before Ethan could respond, the shadowy figure interjected, face it, Mark. You need to confront Mia or you'll be tethered to this past indefinitely. It won't just fade away. Instinctively, Mark felt a spark of resolve igniting within him. Perhaps this dark cloud hovering over their lives was an opportunity to act, to change the narrative not just for himself but for Ethan, too. You're right. If she's out there, we need to find her. Who knows what she might bring into our lives? The prospect electrified the air. A blend of worry and hope flickered in Ethan's eyes as they exchanged glances, the space between them now charged with possibility. Let us not wait. Mark's voice stirred with urgency. I'll start this search. I need you, Ethan. Don't let the past keep us apart. As they stepped forward into uncertain territory, Mark felt a mixture of dread and anticipation. He now had a mission to reclaim a piece of his life and perhaps reshape their future, but would the search for Mia bring healing, or would it unearth deeper wounds that threatened their fragile bond? With renewed focus, Mark vowed to find out. Even if the cost was greater than he could predict. They stood on the precipice of change, but as Mark reached for his phone, the memories of Mia stormed within him, stirring questions about whether the ghosts they sought could truly be exorcised. Mark's fingers hovered over the phone's screen, an electric tingle racing through him. Each heartbeat resonated in his ears as he contemplated the enormity of what lay ahead. He had spent years barricading himself behind walls of ambition, but now the need to confront his past pushed through like a torrent. The search for Mia was not just a hunt for a lost connection, it was a reckoning with the person he had become. Dad, what's the plan? Ethan's voice broke through, laced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Mark took a deep breath, wrestling with his emotions. I need to find out where she is. I'll start with the places we used to go. Maybe she left something behind, anything that could guide me. Sounds good, but what if she doesn't want to be found? Ethan posed, concern etching his young face. The question cut deeper than Mark anticipated. That's a risk, Ethan. But we can't just sit here wondering what could have been. I need to know. As they plotted their course, Mark felt a sense of clarity surfacing. He had always approached challenges systematically, and now he needed to apply that same determination to his own internal chaos. Searching for Mia wasn't merely about discovery, it was an exploration of his shortcomings and an attempt to mend the rifts widened by his neglect. When the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting an orange glow through the window. They created a list of Mia's favorite spots. Each name conjured more than just a location. It carved memories steeped in laughter and shared dreams, now tinged with bitter regret. Coffee shops, parks, the theater where they once eagerly watched the old classics all represented traces of the life that had crumbled beneath Mark's blind ambition. In that moment, he recognized the importance of breaking the cycle he had trapped himself in. "Ethan, let's make this a project for both of us. I need you on this journey," he declared, a new sense of kinship taking root. "You'll help me navigate the places she loved." Ethan nodded, and Mark could see the flicker of hope in his son's eyes. It was a crucial moment, transforming their fractured dynamic into one forged through collaboration and understanding. Working together, not only to seek Mia but also to heal themselves. As they embarked on their first stop the following day, Mark felt an anxious energy bubbling beneath his calm facade. The familiar rush of adrenaline surged. It felt like a merger meeting, full of potential and uncertainty. Stepping into the coffee shop that had once buzzed with laughter, he was met with a suffocating nostalgia. The barista, a fresh face, served them with a polite smile, oblivious to the tide of emotion sweeping through Mark. He ordered a coffee, an attempt to ground himself amidst the rising storm of memories. "Do you know Mia? She used to come here." He stopped himself, choking on the words. This was the first of many questions he would need to ask, but the gravity of what he was diving into loomed large. "Sorry, sir, not familiar," the barista replied, a hint of pity in his eyes. Mark felt the weight of that rejection he had feared so much, the reality that Mia may have chosen to sever ties, not just with him, but with everything they once shared. He glanced at Ethan, who was busy absorbing the tension of this exploratory mission. "Let's keep asking around. She might still be in town." With a deep exhale, he steeled himself for the unknown journey that awaited them. It was no longer just about finding a missing person. It was about confronting the many unanswered questions swirling in his mind. If he could navigate this, would he finally find closure, or simply more ghosts from the past? As the hours slipped by, each interaction became a crucible for Mark, testing his resolve. He was uncovering not just messages from the past but daunting truths about himself. The further they journeyed, the more he realized that every step was pulling him closer to a confrontation he could never fully anticipate. "What if she doesn't want to see us?" Ethan echoed, voice trembling with uncertainty. "Then I'll respect that," Mark replied. But the words felt heavy, foreboding. In a world filled with regrets and lost chances, what hurt more, the act of searching or the possibility of finding nothing? The sensation tightened within him like a vice. Whatever answer awaited, it would force him to confront his deepest fears. They were venturing into territories that could promise revelation or deepen the cracks in their fragile relationship. But as they prepared to leave the coffee shop, the thought of who they might encounter next ignited a flicker of resolve in Mark's heart. "Tomorrow we'll head to the old park," he said, determination edging his voice. "It's where we spent so many Saturdays." With each step toward an uncertain future, he couldn't shake the feeling that the next revelation would drastically alter the course of their lives. What if the very next question he asked would unravel everything he had hoped to mend? The thought loomed, tethered closely to their shared quest, a realization that their fate was hanging in the balance. The sun's first rays filtered through the curtains, lighting up the now familiar space of their small kitchen. Mark poured himself a cup of coffee, the bitterness reflecting the tension coiling in his stomach. Today marked another step down a path he had long neglected. Ethereal hopes clashed against harsh realities. Could he really change? Could he face Mia's choices without breaking apart? "Dad, you okay?" Ethan asked, munching on a piece of toast. His son's gaze hovered at the intersection of concern and innocence, an anchor that steadied Mark but also amplified his uncertainties. "Yeah," Mark replied, though the authenticity of his voice echoed unconvincingly in the silence. What a fragile web they were spinning, bonding over a search for someone his past had nearly erased. They left the house, the crisp morning air heavy with expectation. Mark could feel the familiar clutch of anxiety as they drove toward the park, a place steeped in memories, both sweet and bitter. Once a refuge, it had become a monument to the life he had forfeited. Arriving, layers of green enveloped them. Sunlight filtered through the branches, illuminating paths where laughter had once echoed. As they walked side by side, each step was weighted, not just with their physical presence, but with a shared lineage of past mistakes. Mark surveyed the park and searched for signs that Mia might have left behind, a mirage of hope urging him forward. "Do you think she remembers?" Ethan's quiet voice broke through the reverie. "Of course she does," Mark responded. The confidence he projected felt unsettling. How could he know Mia's thoughts? He felt a pang of guilt, wishing he could promise Ethan a happy ending, something resembling the closure he so desperately craved. With every face that passed them, Mark's heart raced, contemplating if this stranger was Mia's secretive reflection. His mind danced with reckless scenarios, each more absurd than the last. Would she glare at him with bitterness? Or perhaps, she would smile warmly as if no time had passed at all. Mark's thoughts began to spiral, each possibility unveiling an old wound. Did he deserve forgiveness? Was he even prepared to face the truth that Mia had potentially moved on? The emotional weight bore down on him, each question peeling back layers of his carefully constructed resolve. Suddenly, they spotted a familiar figure seated on a bench, flipping through a well-worn book. The fleeting curiosity ignited a surge in Mark, a mix of dizzying hope and crippling dread. "Ethan, wait." He motioned, his breath hitching. "That looks like her, doesn't it?" Ethan whispered. "Could be," Mark breathed, awaiting the surge of excitement he had anticipated. Instead, doubt washed over him. What if it wasn't her? Let us just watch for a moment. As they observed, Mark's mind raced. This was the confrontation he hadn't prepared for. Was Mia still the same person he had loved, or had time reshaped her? What about him? "She seems peaceful," Ethan remarked. Mark couldn't argue with that. She looked content. But with every beat of his heart, he felt the distance growing between their past and present selves. Here she was, a ghost of his former life, and all he could do was stand before the specter of what might have been. By the time he managed to stand, his mind spun through a labyrinth of emotions. Should we approach her? Ethan's voice trembled with excitement. Innocence radiated from his eagerness. Mark hesitated. What if she doesn't want to see us? Then we've tried, Ethan responded, gritting his teeth with determination. His youthful hope illuminated the darkest corners of Mark's uncertainty. The time had come to face his past, new realities emerging like shadows, dancing provocatively in the backdrop of a once bright history. He stepped forward, the weight of every decision swelling within him. But as he approached, a figure caught his eye on the adjacent trail. In that fleeting moment, he realized Mia wasn't the only page of his past he needed to confront. Who was the stranger walking toward them, and how deeply was the past entangled? With their present, in that instant, all resolve trembled. What revelations awaited Mark just moments away? Mark stood frozen, a silhouette against the trees, the air thick with unspoken words. Each nervous breath brought in a cocktail of hope and dread, making it harder to comprehend this surreal moment. Ethan, brimming with youthful enthusiasm, urged him forward, his hand gripping Mark's arm, pulling him toward the still figure on the bench. Could this truly be Mia, the bridge to everything he had lost? Mia? Mark's voice cracked like a twig. He felt the weight of years behind him, everything he hadn't said looming just beyond the surface. She glanced up, and for a heartbeat, time collapsed around them. Her eyes, deep pools reflecting a myriad of emotions, carried stories of love and loss intertwined with the echoes of their shared past. Mark, she breathed, a hurricane of recognition sweeping through the charged atmosphere. Ethan stepped back, sensing the turbulent currents that stretched between the two adults. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a reckoning of the lives they had lived separate and together, the failures yet to be acknowledged. Mia, it's been a long time, Mark managed, the familiarity of her name lodged in his throat. She looked serene, yet the gravity of their history hung palpably in the air. Years of absence had created an emotional chasm that seemed insurmountable, filled with things left unsaid, choices unmade. Here, now, how would they bridge that space? Why now? Mia asked, a shadow of distrust swimming in her hauntingly familiar gaze. What prompted you to search for me? Mark's answer hovered dangerously close to the truth, but he hesitated, consumed by the growing awareness of the pain he had inflicted on her, not just in his ambition but in his silence. "I was wrong to let you go," he replied, the sincerity weighing heavily on his shoulders. "I'm not here to undo the past. I want to understand it, to learn from it. I've realized I need to face what I lost and the mistakes I made." Ethan's eyes darted between them, uncertainty thickening the air around him. "Mia," he said, stepping slightly forward. "I don't know much about you, but my dad has changed. He's trying to be better for us." The words hung like an invisible bridge between the two adults, a fragile hope igniting in the silence. Mia's expression softened, and for the first time, vulnerability washed over her stoic facade. "You have no idea the walls I built to survive," she admitted, voice trembling yet powerful. "Being someone you loved was merely a whisper of who I am now. I've created a life, Mark, away from grandeur and shadow." "I understand," Mark insisted, his heart racing. "But we can't move forward without confronting what happened. I realize it was my ambition that built a wall between us, and I've had to reckon with my shortcomings." Here, at the precipice of change, he felt grounded for the first time in his life. Ethan turned to his father, wordlessly encouraging him to continue. "Mia," Mark implored, "I don't expect you to come back. I just want a chance to make amends." Silence wrapped around them, taut with complexity and newfound possibility. Was she ready to expose her heart after years of silence? The decision loomed like a specter, amplifying every moment, every internal dialogue. "I've missed you, you know," Mia finally admitted, tears motter in the corners of her eyes. "But moving on was never just easy. I had to protect myself from the hurt." This was the moment Mark had sought, the connection he had yearned for, yet it came with the burden of truth, the truths he had long buried. "What I want, Mia, is to open this dialogue not just for us, but for Ethan. To show him how to build authentic relationships, rather than idolizing the mirage of success." Ethan's silhouette deepened in the twilight as he took a step back, almost transforming into an observer of their reunion, a reflection of how precious this moment was. Mark had finally embraced vulnerability, the power of honesty, reaching out to Mia, bridging the chasms they had created between them. Mia hesitated, still considering the enormity of unfolding feelings. "Then, let us start with authenticity." A small nod settled in the space between them, a tentative commitment to deep truth, not superficiality. Mark's heart surged with a cathartic release of pressure, the storm of regret beginning to ease. "Together," he whispered, "we'll navigate through everything, the past, the good and the bad. Let's not remove our histories from our narrative, but rather integrate them." As those words settled, Mark felt them shift the landscape. Could they truly embrace the complexities of their shared experiences, rather than sidestepping the truth? Each heartbeat pulsed forward a new future, one built not on silence or shadows, but light, and just as the sun dipped below the horizon, flooding their world in gold, hope blossomed within him that he hadn't just searched for Mia. He had embarked on a profound journey of redemption and understanding. Mark stood hand in hand with Ethan, embarking on a new chapter of a legacy, a steadfast commitment to embrace honesty and love over ambition. They faced each other, taking a brave step towards a future unshackled by the ghosts of their past, ready to weave a new narrative threaded with honesty and resilience. As the evening shadows cast by the settling sun lightened their hearts, it was evident, this was the moment of transformation, forging a reality that would linger in their souls, lasting far beyond the spectacular facades of past ambitions. In this defining encounter, they had not only found each other again but had unearthed a truth that would guide them forward. The journey wouldn't always be easy, but together, they would rise changed, renewed, ready to confront the world with authenticity and connection forged through struggle. Now, sharing this emotional conclusion, if you enjoyed this transformative journey, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will tug at your heartstrings. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these powerful messages reach those who need them most. Comment below your reactions and theories about how this story resonated with you. You know, sharing helps more than you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is more than just numbers, it's the heartbeat of our community. Let us continue this journey of overcoming together.